At 78 years old, after being locked out of the house she and her husband built in 1979, Eleanor Ashcombe stood on the sidewalk of Birchwood Lane with $15 and one silver coin in a brown paper grocery bag. That was it. $15. And a coin. The coin was the one Raymond had pressed into her palm on their first date in 1974 outside the Bijou Theater on Chestnut Street when he told her he was saving up for something important. She asked what. He looked at her with those steady gray eyes and said, "You." She kept that coin for 52 years. She kept it through 2 moves, a long hospital stay, a funeral, and a marriage that lasted 47 years. She kept it when she had nothing else left. She did not go to a shelter. She did not call the police. She walked into a storage auction she did not understand, and she spent her last $15 on a unit no one else even bothered to open. The latch snapped. The rusted door groaned upward, and the crowd that had been laughing at her went completely silent, because sitting there in the dark was not junk. It was something no one in that parking lot ever expected to find, and it would change everything. The morning that ended Eleanor Ashcombe's life started before dawn. She woke in the smallest bedroom of the house at 47 Birchwood Lane, the room that used to be her sewing studio, before Kate converted it into a meditation space, before Kate moved Eleanor's singer machine to a shelf in the garage, where it collected dust beside things nobody wanted anymore. She lay still for a moment, listening. Kate and Bradley were already up. Their voices came through the floorboards, low, careful, that particular flatness people use when they do not want to be overheard. Eleanor knew that tone. She had been hearing it for months, the tone of plans being made about her, without her. She sat up slowly. Her back protested. Her left hip protested louder. 78 years of gravity had a way of collecting rent every morning. She dressed the way she always dressed, navy slacks, cotton blouse with a small collar, orthopedic shoes with the Velcro straps, because bending too far in the morning meant her lower back would punish her for the rest of the day. She clipped Raymond's watch onto her left wrist, same as every morning since he died. The crystal was scratched from decades of contact with door frames and workbenches and countertops. The hands had not moved since 3:47 on a Tuesday afternoon in March of 2023. She wore it anyway, because some things do not need to work to matter. She was halfway down the stairs when Bradley stepped onto the landing below her. He was dressed for work already, suit jacket buttoned, keys in his right hand. But he was not leaving. He stood sideways on the staircase, blocking her path without quite making it obvious. He was a tall man, Bradley, broad through the shoulders, the kind of build that fills a doorway and makes you aware of the space you are no longer permitted to occupy. "Eleanor." He never called her Mom. "We need to talk." Kate appeared in the kitchen doorway behind him, arms crossed, chin lifted. She wore the expression she always wore when a decision had already been made, and the conversation was just a formality, a performance of consultation that changed nothing, because everything had already been arranged. Eleanor looked at her daughter, 46 years old. Eleanor had nursed her through colic and chicken pox. Eleanor had driven her to piano lessons every Wednesday for 6 years. Eleanor had hemmed her prom dress at 2 o'clock in the morning because Kate changed her mind about the length. And Eleanor had said, "All right, baby, let me get my pins." That was the daughter standing in the kitchen doorway, with her arms folded, and her decision already made. "We've been looking at some options for you," Bradley said. He was staring at a spot just above Eleanor's left ear. "The way people look when they cannot meet your eyes, but want to appear as though they are trying. Places where you'd be more comfortable." "I am comfortable here," Eleanor said. "You're not, though," Kate said, stepping forward, her voice smooth and flat, the way a river looks smooth and flat right before it drops over a falls. "You left the stove on last Tuesday. You forgot your medication twice this month. The stairs alone are a fall risk. Dr. Whitfield agrees that assisted living would be the safest choice for everyone. I left the stove on once, Eleanor said, and I take my medication every morning at 6:45. I have, for 12 years. Bradley shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He had a square jaw and thick wrists, but nothing behind them held steady. Raymond had been a quiet man with steady hands. Bradley was a loud man with restless ones. "There's a place in Ashford," Bradley said, his voice rehearsed, hollow, the sound of a man reading lines someone else had written. "Meadowbrook Assisted Living, clean rooms, nice grounds, people your age." "This is my house, Bradley." Silence fell between them. Kate glanced sideways at Bradley. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Manila. Thick. "The house is in my name," he said. "It has been for almost 3 years. You signed the transfer yourself, for estate planning. Remember." Eleanor stared at the envelope. She remembered. 8 months after Raymond's funeral. November of 2023. An evening at the kitchen table, Kate spreading papers in front of her, explaining something about probate and tax liability and protecting the property from complications down the line. Eleanor had signed where Kate pointed because she was her daughter, and Eleanor was tired and grief hollowed, and she trusted her to handle things she could not face. The ink was barely dry on Raymond's death certificate. The house still smelled like his coffee, and her daughter put papers in front of her and said, "Sign here, and here, and here." "That is not what you told me I was signing," Eleanor said. Kate's jaw tightened. "You signed it, and we've decided it's best if you get settled somewhere more appropriate. We've already made calls." "I am not going to any facility." Bradley set the envelope on the stair railing. He still had not met her eyes. "Not once. Then you'll need to make your own arrangements. We can't have you here anymore, Eleanor. It's not safe." Eleanor looked at her daughter, 46 years old, standing behind her husband, in the house her father built. The house where Raymond had framed the walls and hung the drywall and laid the hardwood floors with his own hands, over the summer of 1979, while Eleanor brought him lemonade and sandwiches, and their baby daughter slept in a portable crib on the shaded porch, the house where Kate took her first steps on the living room floor. The floor Raymond sanded smooth, so there would be no splinters under her bare feet. "Your father would be ashamed of you," Eleanor said quietly. Something moved across Kate's face. Then it was gone. "You have 20 minutes to get your things," Bradley said. She did not get 20. She got 12. Kate stood in the doorway of the small bedroom while Eleanor packed, arms folded, phone in hand, checking the time. Eleanor took a grocery bag from the kitchen. Brown paper, sturdy handles. She placed the framed photographs from her nightstand inside, her and Raymond on their wedding day. June 21st, 1976, standing in front of the Presbyterian Church on Main Street, the afternoon light catching the lace collar of her borrowed dress. Raymond holding newborn Kate, his face caught somewhere between terror and wonder, his calloused hands cradling the baby like she was made of blown glass, her mother's portrait in its small oval frame, sepia-toned, taken in a studio in Portsmouth, when her mother was younger than Kate was now. Raymond's watch was already on her wrist. She added her reading glasses. The cardigan she had knitted herself 6 winters ago, cable knit, navy blue, with wooden buttons she had sewn on by hand, a tube of arthritis cream she rubbed into her knuckles every night, and her wallet. Inside the wallet were $15, a 10, a 5, and the silver coin from outside the Bijou Theater in 1974. 78 years of living, and everything she could carry weighed less than a bag of groceries. Kate walked her to the front door. Bradley was already gone. He had taken his car and left while Eleanor was still packing, which told her everything she needed to know about how much of this he could stand to watch. The door closed behind her. The deadbolt turned. Eleanor heard it from the porch. That particular sound, metal sliding into metal, the sound of a lock engaging on the other side of a door that used to be yours. She stood on the front walk of 47 Birchwood Lane and looked at the house. White clapboard, black shutters. The porch, Raymond rebuilt twice because the first time the joists were not level enough to satisfy him, even though no one else could tell the difference. The magnolia in the front yard, the one she had planted the spring Kate was born, 46 years of growth. Its highest branches reached past the second-floor windows now, but this was October, and the blossoms were gone, and the leaves were turning, and Eleanor was standing on the sidewalk with a paper bag, with nowhere to go. $15. That was what a lifetime came down to. She stood there long enough for Mrs. Peterson next door to look out her kitchen window, see Eleanor on the sidewalk with a paper bag, and pull the curtain shut, long enough for the automatic sprinklers across the street to kick on, and fill the silence with the sound of water hitting grass. Then Eleanor turned and walked. She did not know where she was going. Her feet took her toward Dolores. Because that is what feet do. They take you toward the person you have called first for 40 years, even when you have not called in months, even when you know they cannot help. Dolores Whitman lived 3 blocks over, a small yellow house with a wraparound porch, a wooden ramp that had been added last year, when Harold came home from the hospital after his stroke. Eleanor climbed the ramp, rang the bell. Dolores opened the door in a house dress and slippers. Her hair was pulled back with a clip. There were shadows under her eyes that had not been there the last time Eleanor saw her. Dolores looked at Eleanor, looked at the grocery bag, looked at Eleanor's face. "Oh, honey." That was all she said, because Dolores had known Eleanor for 40 years, and Dolores did not need the story. Dolores could read it. Come in. Let me put on some coffee." Eleanor stepped inside. The house smelled like antiseptic and coffee, and the particular thickness of a house where someone is dying slowly. Harold was in the living room, in a recliner, his head tilted to one side, his right arm curled against his chest. The television was on. The sound was off. Dolores led Eleanor into the kitchen, sat her down, poured 2 cups of coffee. Eleanor tried to speak. She could not. Dolores waited. "Kate," Eleanor finally said. "Kate and Bradley." Dolores nodded once, slowly, like she had been expecting this news for a while, and was only sorry it had finally come. "The house," Eleanor said. "They took the house. Ellie, I have $15 and Raymond's coin." Dolores reached across the table, took Eleanor's hand. "Stay here." Eleanor looked past her friend, into the living room, where Harold sat in his recliner, with a feeding tube, and a nurse who came 3 times a week, and bills that Dolores had stopped opening because there was no money to pay them. "Dolores, stay here. We'll figure something out. Harold won't even know. He barely knows I'm here half the time." "Dolores." Eleanor pulled her hand back gently. "You are the only person in this world I would ask, and I cannot ask you." Dolores closed her eyes. When she opened them, there were tears. "Let me at least give you." She stood up, walked to the counter, opened her purse, pulled out a $20 bill. It was the only cash inside. "Take it." "No." "Ellie, you need it more than I do." "That is not true." "It is." Dolores held the 20 out. Eleanor did not take it. They stood in the kitchen, 2 78-year-old women, one holding a 20, one holding a grocery bag. "I have to go," Eleanor said. "Where?" "I don't know yet." Ellie, I'll call when I know. Dolores hugged her, hard, the kind of hug you give someone when you are afraid it might be the last one. Then Eleanor walked back out onto Main Street. She walked past the Presbyterian church where she and Raymond had been married 47 years ago, in front of 14 guests and a borrowed organist who played slightly too fast because she had another wedding at 3, past Millie's Diner, where she and Raymond had eaten Sunday breakfast for longer than she could count. Scrambled eggs and rye toast for Raymond, pancakes with strawberries for Eleanor. The same booth by the window every week for 30 years. Until the morning, Raymond was not there to sit in it anymore. Past the hardware store with its hand-painted window signs, past the bank, past the bench outside the post office where Raymond used to sit and talk to whoever happened by. Because Raymond talked to everyone, slowly, patiently. He gave each person the same steady attention he gave a piece of wood he was about to cut. October in Fairhaven, New Hampshire, was usually beautiful. The maples along Main Street had turned gold and scarlet, dry leaves scattered across the sidewalk, cracked under her orthopedic shoes. Any other morning, Eleanor would have called it lovely. Today, the beauty felt like an insult. The world kept turning, bright and indifferent, and she was carrying her whole life in a paper bag. She sat down on the bench outside the post office. Raymond's bench. She looked down at her hands, opened her wallet, $15, and the coin. She held the coin between her thumb and forefinger, turned it in the October light. 1974. She was 26 years old. He was 28. They had known each other 4 weeks. He had taken her to see The Godfather Part 2 at the Bijou Theater on Chestnut Street, and afterward they had stood on the sidewalk and he had pressed the coin into her palm. "I'm saving up for something important," he had said. "What, you?" Eleanor closed her fingers around the coin. She sat on the bench, and she did not cry. She did not know why she did not cry. Maybe because tears required somewhere safe to land, and there was nowhere safe. She got up and kept walking. Main Street ended where the shops gave way to gas stations and gravel lots and chain-link fencing. On the right, a wide parking area opened up beside rows of low, corrugated metal buildings. A sign at the entrance read, "Fairhaven Self-Storage." Below it, a red banner on white vinyl. "Auction today." A crowd had gathered near the first row of units. 15, maybe 20 people. Most held paper coffee cups. Some carried folding chairs under their arms. A man in a cowboy hat stood on a plastic crate, adjusting a portable microphone that popped and whined. He said something about the weather. The crowd laughed. Eleanor did not know what a storage auction was. She had never thought about what happened to things people left behind. But the group was loud and warm and alive, people elbowing each other, trading jokes, arguing about who owed who a coffee. And after 4 hours of walking alone through a town that had looked right through her, the noise felt like shelter. She stood at the edge of the group, grocery bag pressed to her chest, and watched. The auctioneer worked fast, cracking jokes between bids. Each unit door was rolled up just enough for the crowd to peer inside. Then the numbers started flying. Unit 1 held cardboard boxes and a broken exercise bike, $40. Unit 2 had mildewed furniture and a stack of bald tires, $55. Unit 3 was packed floor to ceiling with sealed plastic bins. 2 men drove the price to $320, jabbing fingers at each other while the auctioneer egged them on. The regulars all knew each other. A heavy-set man in a plaid jacket bid on nearly everything and won most of it. A woman with a clipboard tracked each sale in tidy columns. Near the back of the group, a tall man in canvas overalls stood with his arms folded, watching everything with an unhurried patience. Something about the way he stood reminded Eleanor of Raymond, still, attentive. giving the world time to show him what it had. He bid once early. A rolling toolbox and a pair of mechanic's lights, $70. Paid in cash, loaded them into his pickup. Came back, resumed his position at the edge of the crowd. Units kept selling. The crowd thinned as winners loaded their trucks. By the time the auctioneer reached the back row, only 8 or 9 people remained. Unit 19, the auctioneer called out. Last one today, folks. 5 by 10. Climate controlled. Delinquent 18 months. Let's have a look. The facility manager cut the padlock with bolt cutters, gripped the bottom rail. The roll-up door was dented and stiff, its tracks rusted from disuse. He kicked the base, pulled hard, and the door groaned upward on reluctant rollers before stopping halfway. Inside was dark. The unit faced north, away from the afternoon sun, and the overhead bulb had burned out. From the entrance nothing was visible but shadow, and the vague shapes of things nobody could make out. "Can't see a thing," someone said. "Probably empty," said another. 25 to start, the auctioneer said. Climate-controlled mystery unit. This is where the fun is, folks. Who wants it? No hands. The heavy-set man was strapping bungee cords. The clipboard woman was walking to her car. The tall man in overalls gave the dark opening a long look and turned away. 25. Anybody 15? 10. If somebody wants to get adventurous, nothing. Tired chuckles. The auctioneer shrugged and started to wave the unit off. Eleanor raised her hand. She would try to explain it afterward, and never quite manage. Maybe it was because the unit reminded her of herself, sitting in the dark, passed over, waiting for someone to bother looking. Maybe it was because she had $15, and no reason left to save them, and nowhere to spend them anyway. Maybe she was just tired of walking. 15, she said. Her voice was thin in the open air. The auctioneer stopped mid-gesture. The remaining bidders glanced at her, at the grocery bag, at her orthopedic shoes, at the cardigan draped over her arm. Someone near the trucks let out a short, dismissive laugh. $15 from the lady. Do I hear 20? Silence. Going once. Going twice. Sold. Unit 19. $15. The facility manager handed her a receipt and a new padlock still in its plastic packaging. All yours, he said. His tone was neither kind nor unkind. 30 days before fees start. The last stragglers drifted toward the parking lot. The tall man in overalls paused beside his truck, watching Eleanor from across the gravel. He did not drive away. Eleanor set her grocery bag on the concrete. She walked to Unit 19, gripped the bottom of the roll-up door with both hands, and hauled it the rest of the way up. The track screamed. The door slammed open at the top. Afternoon light flooded the space. A rocking chair sat just inside the entrance, positioned facing outward, catching the sun on its curved back. Cherrywood, hand rubbed to a finish so deep the grain seemed to glow from inside the wood. The armrests were worn smooth along their edges, shaped by years of careful sanding, until they felt like water under your palms. Behind it, larger shapes emerged from the dimness. A long table with turned legs, a pair of tall bookshelves, a wide dresser with brass pulls. Canvas drop cloths covered some of the bigger pieces. Along the left wall, pegboard panels held rows of tools on labeled hooks, organized by type and size: chisels, hand planes, coping saws, marking gauges, each one clean, each one in its place. It was not storage. It was a workshop. Someone had built beautiful things here, or kept what they built, with the care of a person who loved what their hands had made. The auctioneer, halfway to his van, turned around. 2 men loading a truck stopped and stared. The tall man in overalls opened his door and stepped back out onto the gravel. Nobody said a word. Eleanor did not notice any of them. She was looking at the rocking chair. She stepped forward, knelt on the concrete. Her left knee protested the way it always did, a sharp complaint that settled into a dull, familiar ache. She ran her fingers along the joint where the armrest met the backrest, a hand-cut dovetail, tight and clean, no nails, no screws, no filler. The grain matched perfectly across the seam, cut from the same board and reassembled, so the wood flowed unbroken around the corner. She knew this joint. She had seen it 1,000 times, in the kitchen cabinets Raymond built when they first moved into the house on Birchwood, in the bookshelves he made for the living room, in the jewelry box he carved for their 20th anniversary, the one that sat on her dresser for 28 years, until Kate replaced it with a decorative tray from a catalogue. This was Raymond's work. Her husband had been dead for 3 years. She had spent all of them believing his garage evenings produced birdhouses and cutting boards and small wooden spoons. Small things for small occasions. She never pushed him to show her, because he always seemed shy about his projects, and she respected that quiet, because it was their way. He built. She sewed. They lived side by side, close but never intrusive. She had never imagined this. Eleanor lowered herself into the rocking chair. The springs creaked once, and settled. The seat curved against her back, as if it had been waiting for her. The wood was cool and smooth under her palms, sanded so fine she could feel nothing but the warmth of the finish. She sat there while the light moved across the concrete floor, and the shadows lengthened, and the afternoon deepened around her, and she held the arms of a chair her dead husband had built in secret, and she did not move. Outside on the gravel, the tall man in canvas overalls stood beside his pickup, watching the open door of Unit 19, watching the woman inside, sitting in a rocking chair, not moving. He did not know her. He did not know what he had just seen, but he knew the joinery he had glimpsed from the parking lot, and he knew that woman was not going anywhere on her own. He got into his truck. He did not start the engine. He sat there, waiting. The facility closed at 6. The last car left the lot. The manager walked past Unit 19, saw the door was open, saw Eleanor sitting inside, sighed, said, "Ma'am, we close at 6. Eleanor did not answer. The manager looked at her for a long moment, looked at the pegboard of tools, looked at the drop cloths, looked back at her. "You okay?" "Yes." "Do you have somewhere to go?" Eleanor did not answer that question either. The manager rubbed the back of his neck. He was a young man, 28 maybe. He looked around the empty lot. "I'm supposed to lock the gate." "I understand. There's a code on the side door. If you need to—" He stopped himself, started again. "Look, I didn't see anything, just don't set anything on fire." "Okay," Eleanor nodded. The manager left. The gate rolled shut. The lot went dark, and Eleanor was alone. She pulled the roll-up door down from the inside, leaving a gap of about 6 inches at the bottom for air. She spread her navy cardigan on the concrete beside the rocking chair. She set the grocery bag of photographs under her head, as a pillow, and she lay down. The concrete was cold. October in New Hampshire drops into the low 40s at night. A storage unit has no insulation, no heat, no blankets. She pulled her knees up toward her chest, the way she had not slept since she was a child, trying to make herself small enough to hold her own warmth. Her left hip ached against the hard floor. Her lower back seized within the first hour, and did not release. The air smelled like linseed oil and old sawdust and cold metal. She was 78 years old, lying on the concrete floor of a storage unit, and not a single person in the world knew where she was. She thought about Raymond, about the way he smelled when he came home from the lumber yard, pine resin and machine oil, the way he kissed her on the forehead every evening, before disappearing into the garage. She had always assumed the projects were small. She had been wrong about that, for longer than she knew. Sometime after midnight, she stopped trying to sleep. She sat up in the dark, leaned against the rocking chair, held Raymond's watch against her ear, even though it had not ticked in 3 years. The glass was cold against her skin. She held it there anyway. Because some sounds do not need to be real to be heard, she whispered into the dark. "Raymond, what did you build in here?" Nothing answered, but outside, beyond the corrugated metal wall, in the parking lot, a pickup truck sat with its lights off, and a tall man in canvas overalls waited. He would still be there in the morning, because he had seen the joinery, and he had seen the woman, and he knew. Some things you do not walk away from, even if you do not know why yet. Morning came gray and slow. Eleanor had not slept. She sat with her back against the rocking chair, wrapped in her navy cardigan, watching the thin line of light widen under the roll-up door. Her hip was a locked joint. Her back was a wall. Her fingers were stiff and cold. But she was still here. That was the thing. She was still here. At 6:45, she reached into her pocket, took her medication with a swallow of nothing, because her mouth was too dry to make spit. But she took it. Same time as every morning for 12 years. She wanted to remember she had done that, because Kate had told the doctor she forgot, and Eleanor had not forgotten a single dose. Not one. At 7:15, she heard tires on gravel, then a car door, then footsteps, not the manager's footsteps. Slower than that. Heavier. Someone taking his time, someone who knew how to walk on gravel without slipping. The footsteps stopped outside Unit 19. A soft knock on the metal door. Twice. Not loud, not urgent. The kind of knock you use when you do not want to startle someone. "Ma'am." Eleanor did not answer. "Ma'am, it's the fellow from the auction, in the overalls. I brought coffee." Silence. "I'm not going to open the door. I just wanted to leave the cup here. My wife made it. She uses too much sugar. So if you don't like sugar, I apologize in advance." Eleanor closed her eyes, because if she opened her mouth right now, she was going to say something, and she did not know what. "I'm going to sit in my truck, over there by the fence. You can come out when you're ready, or you can not come out. Either way, the coffee is here." Footsteps again, retreating. Eleanor waited a long time, long enough for the coffee to stop steaming. Then she pushed the roll-up door up, just a little. A styrofoam cup sat on the concrete. Beside it, a paper bag, small, folded neatly at the top. She looked out across the lot. The blue pickup was parked by the fence. The tall man was inside, reading a newspaper. He was not looking at her. He was giving her privacy, even in a parking lot, which was more privacy than she had received in her own house for the last 3 years. Eleanor picked up the cup. The coffee was warm. Ruth used too much sugar. It was the best thing Eleanor had tasted in months. Inside the paper bag was a biscuit, wrapped in a napkin, still warm. Eleanor stood in the doorway of Unit 19, ate the biscuit, drank the coffee, watched the sky lighten over the fence line. Then she walked across the gravel to the blue pickup. The man rolled down the window. "Ma'am?" "Eleanor." "Walter." "Walter." "Kaminsky. My wife is Ruth. She has more coffee at the house, if you're interested." "I don't take charity, Walter." "Neither do I." "Then what do you call this?" Walter thought about that. "Breakfast." Eleanor almost smiled. She had forgotten she could almost smile. "I need to sort through what's in there," she said, "before I go anywhere. Then I'll help you sort." "I did not ask for help." "No, ma'am, you didn't." He got out of the truck. He was taller up close, late 60s, maybe 70. Close-cropped gray hair, thick forearms marked with old burn scars, the kind welders carry. His face was weathered, his expression careful and still. He walked with her back to Unit 19. He stopped at the open door, looked inside, looked at the rocking chair, the bookshelves, the tools on the pegboard. He was quiet for a long time. "Ma'am, Eleanor, Eleanor, who built these? My husband. Your husband was a master. He worked at a lumber yard for 31 years. Walter shook his head slowly. "That's not what I asked." Eleanor looked at him. He looked back, not with pity, not with curiosity, with something else, something that reminded her of Raymond at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning, when he would look up from his newspaper and listen to whatever she was saying, as if it mattered. "His name was Raymond," Eleanor said. Walter nodded once. "Then let's see what Raymond built." They worked through the unit piece by piece. Walter handled the heavy furniture. Eleanor uncovered it. The dining table first. She pulled the canvas drop cloth off. Her breath caught. Solid walnut. Hand-carved cabriole legs, a finish so deep it held her reflection. The apron joined the legs with mortise and tenon, so tight you could not slide a piece of paper into the seam. The bookshelves, matching cherry with adjustable shelves and glass-fronted doors. The doors opened and closed with the precise resistance of well-fitted joinery. Not too loose, not too tight. The way a good door feels when the man who hung it knew what he was doing. A blanket chest in quarter sawn oak, with a magnolia branch carved into the lid. Eleanor traced the carving with her fingertip. Every petal, every leaf. The magnolia tree in the front yard of 47 Birchwood Lane, rendered in oak by her husband's hands. She sat down on the concrete beside the chest, because her knees would not hold her. Walter stood back, gave her space, turned his attention to a stack of drawings pinned to the wall, sketches in Raymond's careful pencil. Eleanor traced the carving. She thought about the summer of 1980. Kate had been an infant. Raymond had dug a hole in the front yard, planted a sapling. Told Eleanor, "This tree is going to outlive us." That's the whole point. She had laughed at him. She had not understood what he meant. She understood now. They kept unpacking. A writing desk with dovetailed drawers, a hall table with tapered legs, a child-sized step stool with edges rounded smooth, so a small pair of hands would not catch a splinter. 6 shaker-style dining chairs with woven rush seats, each one identical, which meant Raymond had built jigs and templates to ensure consistency, which meant this was not a hobby. This was a calling. Every piece signed on the underside, 2 letters burned into the wood. R.A. Raymond Ashcombe. Walter crouched beside the dining table, examined the joinery where the apron met the leg, ran his thumbnail along the joint, shook his head slowly. Your husband could have charged real money for this. He worked at a lumber yard. That explains the wood selection. It doesn't explain the craftsmanship. Eleanor looked around the unit. 12 years of work. 12 years of Sunday afternoons. 12 years of Saturday mornings. 12 years of him saying he was going to run errands and coming home with sawdust on his sleeves, and her thinking he was fixing the neighbor's porch. 12 years, and she had not known. Why, she said, to no one, to Raymond, to the walls. Walter did not answer, because it was not his question to answer. Near the back of the unit, half hidden behind the blanket chest, Eleanor found a small desk, simple, clean lines, a fold-down front, 3 shallow drawers. She opened the top one. Inside was a sealed envelope, cream-colored, yellowed at the edges. A single word written across the front, in handwriting she would have recognized from across a room. Eleanor, the E with its distinctive crossbar. The careful, unhurried print of a man who measured twice before he did anything, even writing a name on an envelope. She sat down on the concrete floor, her back against the little desk, the grocery bag beside her, the rocking chair silhouetted against the afternoon light. She slid her finger under the flap and pulled out 3 sheets of lined paper, filled front and back, in Raymond's small square hand. My Eleanor, if you are reading this, then I owe you an explanation, and about 40 years of apologies for being so secretive. Eleanor's hand shook. She pressed the paper against her knee to steady it. You probably found this letter in the top drawer of the little desk near the back wall. I built that desk last, because I wanted it to be the thing you found first. I am not good with surprises, Eleanor. I planned this one for a decade, and I still do not know if I got it right. She could hear him. That was what undid her. She could hear his voice, in every line. That slow, slightly formal cadence he used when he was explaining something he cared about. Patient, a little embarrassed to be talking so long. Here is what I should have told you a long time ago. After I retired from the yard, I rented this storage unit, 5 by 10, climate-controlled, $240 a year. I told you I was going to the garage to work on small projects. And that part was true. Mostly. But the bigger pieces, the ones that took real space and real time, I brought here. I would drive over in the mornings, after you left for the fabric shop, or on Saturdays, when you were at your quilting circle, and I would work until lunch. Then I would lock up, come home, and be sitting on the porch with my coffee by the time you got back. She looked up from the letter, the rocking chair framed in the open doorway, afternoon light pooling on its smooth armrest, the cherry wood glowing warm in the sun. She had thought he was napping in the garage. She had thought he was tinkering. She had been so proud of herself for not disturbing him, for giving him his quiet. I started selling some of the pieces about 6 years back. Nothing grand. I would load a table or a set of chairs into the truck and take them to the flea market on the first Saturday of the month. Then a woman who runs an antique shop in town started buying from me regular. Beatrice, I think. B. She would sell them for 3 or 4 times what I charged her, and we were both happy with the arrangement. The money went into a fireproof safe in the back of this unit. I did not put it in the bank, because I did not want it showing up on our statements, and having to explain it before I was ready. I was not saving for myself. I was saving for us. Eleanor set the pages down on her knee. Her hands were shaking too hard to hold them steady. She picked the pages back up. Here is what I was going to do. On the morning of our 50th, I was going to drive you out here, roll up that door, and show you everything, every table, every shelf, every chair I built with my own hands, and then I was going to hand you the savings, and tell you this. We do not need Kate Eleanor. We do not need her help, or her opinions, or her plans for our lives. We have enough. We have this. Eleanor closed her eyes. Their 50th would have been June 21st, 2026. 4 months from now. He had died 3 years ago. 2 weeks before he was going to bring her here. He had almost made it. He had built her an escape hatch 10 years in advance, and run out of time by the width of a spring. Eleanor pressed her hand to her mouth. Walter was standing at the doorway of the unit, his back to her, giving her privacy. He had not turned around once since she opened the envelope. She picked the pages back up. I know you think I just puttered around in the garage making birdhouses, and I do make birdhouses. But I also made you a dining table that seats 8, because I always thought we should have one big enough for company, even if we never got around to inviting anyone. And I made bookshelves, because you love your books, and you deserve better than those wobbly particle board things from the department store. And I made you a rocking chair, because you told me once, a long time ago, that your mother had one on her porch when you were a girl. Cherrywood. You said you used to sit in it and watch the fireflies come up from the grass. She remembered. She had said it once, maybe 40 years ago, sitting on the porch swing on a humid July evening. 1985, maybe. Kate had been 5, asleep upstairs. My mama had a rocking chair on her porch, cherrywood, and I would sit in it for hours watching the fireflies. She had said it once, in passing, on an ordinary evening, and Raymond had remembered, and Raymond had built it. He did not need her to see him, to keep loving her. He just kept building. The last paragraph was shorter, the handwriting slightly less steady, the pen pressing harder. I do not know when you will find this. I paid up the rent on the unit through next year, and if something happens to me before our anniversary, I figure the unit will go to auction eventually, and somehow you will end up here. That is the plan anyway. It is not a great plan. But I was never good at plans, Eleanor. I was good at building things, so that is what I did. I just kept building. I love you. I should have said it more. Raymond J. Ashcombe. Below the signature, in smaller letters. Check the safe. Combination is our anniversary. The date, not the year. Eleanor sat on the concrete floor, holding the letter, not moving. Walter did not turn around. He gave her as long as she needed, which was a long time. The safe was bolted to a metal plate, lag bolted to the concrete slab, dark gray steel, heavy enough that Walter grunted when he crouched to examine the hinges. Eleanor knelt beside it, placed her fingers on the combination dial, turned it slowly. 0, 6, 2, 1. June 21st, the day she and Raymond stood in front of the Presbyterian church and promised each other 50 years. They got 47. The handle turned, the heavy door swung open. On the top shelf, bundled cash, banded stacks of 20s and 50s, each rubber banded separately, with a small slip of paper, noting the amount in Raymond's handwriting. Eleanor pulled them out one by one. Walter counted without being asked. $28,400. Eleanor stared at the bills spread on the concrete. Raymond had earned $12.60 an hour at the lumber yard when he retired. This pile represented years of quiet industry, furniture built and sold piece by piece, dollar by dollar, stacked in a fireproof box on Route 12, while she hemmed trousers at the fabric shop, and believed he was sanding birdhouses. Below the cash on the bottom shelf sat 3 items. The first was a leather-bound journal, thick, soft from years of handling. Raymond's handwriting filled every page. Dates, measurements, wood species, finish formulas, pencil sketches with dimensions marked in fractions, a complete record of everything he had built over a decade. The second was a document, a property deed, but not the one Bradley had waved on the staircase. This was the original, filed with the county in 1979, and at the top, in the county recorder's precise typeface, were 2 names, Raymond J. Ashcombe and Eleanor M. Ashcombe, joint tenants with right of survivorship. Both names. The house belonged to both of them. When Raymond died, it should have passed entirely to Eleanor, automatically. That was what joint tenancy meant. That was the law. The document Bradley had filed was a fraud. The third item was a wooden box, small enough to hold in one hand, cherrywood, dovetailed corners, a tiny brass clasp. Inside, on a square of folded velvet, lay a necklace, wooden beads hand-turned on a lathe, each one slightly different in grain and color, strung on a delicate silver chain. The last 2 beads were rough, unfinished, still waiting for the sanding that would bring them smooth. Raymond had run out of time. Eleanor closed the box, held it in her lap. Then she picked up the deed. Walter. Yes, ma'am. The house I was locked out of yesterday morning. Yes, it is on this deed, both my name and Raymond's, joint tenancy. Walter looked at the deed, at the two names, at the county seal. Your son-in-law filed a different deed. It was not a question. He told me I signed a transfer. I signed papers. But I did not understand what they were. Kate said it was for estate planning. Walter was quiet for a long moment. Eleanor. Yes. You know what this means. It means my son-in-law stole my house. Yes. Did you expect that? No, ma'am, neither did you. Walter did not try to soften it. He did not try to explain it away. He let the truth have its weight. I know a lawyer, he said. Edmund Fairchild. Good man. Honest, mostly retired. But he still takes cases when they matter. This one matters. Eleanor nodded. She could not speak yet, because if she spoke, she would start crying. And once she started crying, she was not sure she would stop. That afternoon, Walter drove her to Lindquist Antiques on Main Street, a narrow storefront with a green awning. The bell chimed when they pushed through the door. The shop was deeper than it was wide, furniture along both walls. The air smelled of lemon polish and old fabric. A woman stood near the back counter, pricing a set of Depression-era plates, slight, short silver hair, rectangular glasses on a beaded chain. Morning, Walter. What did you bring me this time? Not mine. He nodded toward Eleanor. Hers. Eleanor set a pair of candle stands on the counter. B. Lindquist looked at them. Then she stopped what she was doing entirely. Put down her pricing gun, removed her glasses, leaned close to the joinery. Where did you get these? A storage unit. My husband built them. B turned one candle stand over and went still when she found the mark. R.A. Your husband is R.A. Was? He has been gone 3 years. B pressed both palms flat on the counter. She looked at Eleanor for a long moment. Then she said, Come with me. She led Eleanor through a curtained doorway into a back office, filing cabinets, binders labeled by year. B pulled down 3, spread papers across the desk, sales receipts, photographs, customer feedback cards. I have been selling R.A. pieces for 6 years. A man walked in one morning with a side table in the back of his truck. No card, no website, just work clothes, and a table. I looked at the joinery, and I bought it on the spot. She fanned out the receipts. Dozens of pieces, each documented with a photograph and a sale price. 300 for a candle stand, 800 for a nightstand, 1,200 for a blanket chest. I never knew his full name. He just told me to call him Raymond. Quiet man. Came in every month or two with a new piece. Always wrapped in moving blankets. Always perfect. Eleanor picked up a feedback card from a woman in Concord. The nightstand is beautiful. You can feel the care in every joint. Whoever R.A. is, please tell them they made something that will outlast all of us. Eleanor pressed her fingers to her mouth. He had a reputation, Eleanor, B. said quietly. A real one. People knew his work, even if they did not know him. Eleanor sat down in the office chair because her legs were not holding her again. B. sat down across from her. Why did he not tell me? Eleanor whispered. B. took a long breath. May I say something, as someone who watched him for 6 years? Eleanor nodded. Some men of that generation, they were not raised to talk about what they loved. They were raised to make it. Your husband did not need an audience. He needed a purpose. This was his purpose, and he was keeping it for you. Every dollar in that safe was for you. Eleanor closed her eyes. She heard Raymond's voice in her head, the way he used to hum while he sanded, that tuneless low sound. She had thought it was just noise. It had been happiness. She had lived with a happy man for 47 years, and she had only understood it now. That evening, Walter drove her to Edmund Fairchild's office, A converted Victorian on Burrell Street, a creaking porch, a brass nameplate. Edmund was tall and angular, wire-rimmed glasses, a quiet, deliberate manner. He had known Raymond from the Elks Lodge. "Show me both deeds," Edmund said. Eleanor placed them side by side, the original from 1979, and the quitclaim deed Bradley had filed. Edmund examined them in silence. "The signature on this transfer. Is this your signature, Eleanor?" "No." "You are certain?" "I have been signing my name my whole life, Edmund. That is not how I make my E. I have never once looped my S. Whoever signed that tried, but they did not get it right." Edmund nodded slowly. "This is forgery, under joint tenancy with right of survivorship. When Raymond passed, the property transferred to you automatically. There is no legal mechanism by which Bradley could have acquired title without your genuine informed consent, combined with the forged signature. This is fraud, under state law. It also qualifies as elder abuse. There are criminal penalties." Eleanor sat in the chair across from his desk, holding the little cherrywood box in her lap. "What do you want to do?" Edmund asked. "I want my house back." "Then we start tomorrow." That night, Eleanor stayed in Eli's room. Ruth had insisted. The bed was already made, the sheets already fresh, as if Ruth had been keeping the room ready for someone, for anyone, for a long time. There was a model warship on the dresser, carefully painted in navy gray, a baseball trophy from 2004. Eleanor did not ask. Ruth did not explain. She just said, "Bathroom is next door, towels on the shelf. You need anything, you holler," and closed the door gently. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, opened Raymond's journal, read one page, then another. Sketches of jigs, notes on wood movement, failures documented alongside successes, a chair leg that split during turning, a tabletop that warped, a bookshelf he took apart and rebuilt because the proportions felt wrong by a quarter inch. She read until midnight. Then she closed the journal, turned out the light, and slept for the first time in 3 days. Edmund's letter went out the next morning. Certified mail. 2 pages. The original deed, the forged signature, the request to vacate and restore title, or face criminal prosecution. 3 days passed. Silence. On the 4th day, a response came. Not from Bradley, from his attorney, Patricia Voss, a woman Eleanor had never heard of. Edmund read the letter twice. Then he looked up at Eleanor, and she saw something in his face she had not seen before. Concern. "Eleanor." He did not offer to settle. What did he do? He filed a petition with the county court. What kind of petition? To have you declared mentally incompetent, incapable of managing your own affairs, unfit to make legal decisions. He is requesting that the court appoint him as your legal guardian. Eleanor sat very still. That means, if the court agrees, you lose more than the house. You lose the right to make decisions about your own life, your finances, your medical care, your freedom. You cannot file a lawsuit if you cannot legally speak for yourself. Every piece of evidence we have becomes irrelevant. Eleanor looked down at her hands. 78 years of hands. Hands that had sewn wedding dresses and hemmed prom dresses. Hands that had held Kate's small feet the day she was born. Hands that had washed Raymond's forehead the morning she found him at the kitchen table. Hands that had opened an envelope in a storage unit and heard her husband's voice. She looked up. "Get the medical records, Edmund. All of them. Call Dr. Whitfield. Call anyone we need." "Yes." "And Edmund." "Yes." "I am not incompetent." "No, ma'am. You are not. They are going to lose." "Yes, they are." Eleanor walked out of Edmund's office. Walter was waiting in the truck. He did not ask. She did not tell him yet. They drove back to the house on Elm Street in silence. Ruth had dinner on. Eleanor sat at the table, ate a few bites, excused herself, walked down the hall to Eli's room. She sat on the edge of the bed, under the model warship, beside the baseball trophy from 2004, and she opened Raymond's journal again. To a page in the middle, he had written across the top of the page, in pencil, "Third attempt at this joint, failed twice, third one held." Below that, a small note, "Keep going, that is the only trick there is." Eleanor closed the journal, pressed it to her chest. Ruth appeared in the doorway. Eleanor had not heard her come down the hall. Ruth stepped inside quietly, sat down beside her on the bed, did not speak for a long minute. Then she said, "Eleanor." "Yes, I locked this room for 8 years." Eleanor turned to look at her. Ruth was looking at the model warship on the dresser. After Eli was killed, Afghanistan, 2011. He was 23, Marine, Helmand Province. I locked the door. I told Walter I could not stand to look inside. Walter did not argue with me. He just left it alone. Eleanor waited. For 8 years. Every time I walked past this door, I could feel it, like a weight, like a bruise. I thought I was preserving him, by keeping the room exactly the way he left it. I thought that was love. It was love. It was fear, dressed up as love. They can look the same for a long time. Eleanor did not speak. She looked at her hands again. One morning I woke up, and I understood. If I kept that door locked, I was keeping him locked in there too. I was keeping the part of me that had raised him locked in there, which meant that part of me was dying with him, slowly, behind the door. Ruth turned to face her. So I opened it, not because I stopped grieving, but because grief and life were not supposed to be enemies. They were supposed to walk together. Eleanor felt her eyes burn. I lost my son. You lost your husband, and now they want to take away the last thing you have left of him, the house he built. Yes, Eleanor. Yes. Do not let them lock the door. Eleanor pressed her hands against her face. She did not cry, but she came very close. Ruth reached over, placed her hand on Eleanor's knee, and left it there. Not squeezing, not patting, just there, the way a friend's hand knows how to be there. Eleanor breathed out slowly. I have a psychological evaluation on the 20th. Yes, I am scared. I know. I am 78. If I forget one small thing, they will use it against me. They will try. Ruth. Yes. What did you do when you opened the door? Ruth thought about that. I sat inside, and I said his name out loud, for the first time in 8 years. Eli. Eleanor closed her eyes. Raymond. She said it softly, but she said it. Raymond. Raymond. Ruth stood up, squeezed Eleanor's shoulder once, left the room without a word. Eleanor sat on the bed, in Eli's room, holding Raymond's journal, and she made a decision. She would not lock the door. Not for Bradley, not for Kate, not for anyone. She would walk into that evaluation on the 20th, and she would answer every question, steady, clear, awake, because Raymond had spent 12 years building her a way out, and she was not going to waste it by disappearing into a facility and letting a man in a suit sell her husband's tools for $80. On the morning of November 20th, Eleanor put on her navy slacks, her cotton blouse with the small collar, her orthopedic shoes with the Velcro straps. She clipped Raymond's watch onto her left wrist. She sat down at the kitchen table across from Ruth, ate 2 eggs and a slice of toast, drank her coffee. She said, I am ready. Walter drove her. The evaluation was at Dr. Margaret Halloran's office, in a low brick building beside the county hospital. Eleanor walked in alone. grocery bag replaced by a leather handbag Ruth had loaned her. Head high, slower than she used to walk, but steady. Dr. Halloran was younger than Eleanor expected, mid-50s, warm eyes, a pen in her hand. She asked the standard questions. Eleanor answered them. She asked about medications. Eleanor listed them. Dosages, times, side effects she had noticed, side effects she had not. She asked about recent events, recent presidents, recent weather. Eleanor answered. Then Dr. Halloran set her pen down, looked at Eleanor for a long moment. "Mrs. Ashcombe, do you know what today's date is?" Eleanor took a breath. "Friday, November 20th, 2026. "Very good. 3 years and 8 months since my husband died, 45 days since my daughter locked me out of my house, and the first day I have been certain that I am going to get that house back." Dr. Halloran set her pen down. She looked at Eleanor for a full 10 seconds. Then she said, "Mrs. Ashcombe, in my professional opinion, you are more mentally sharp than most of my patients who are 40 years younger than you. I will write my report today." Eleanor stood up, shook Dr. Halloran's hand, walked out of the office. Walter was waiting in the truck. He did not ask. She got in, closed the door, put her hands on her knees, and she said, "I am not done yet." Walter nodded. He started the engine, because outside, somewhere in a rented condo across town, Bradley was drafting his next move, and he did not know yet that the woman he had underestimated was walking toward him, slowly, steadily, with 47 years of quiet love and 12 years of secret carpentry behind her. And she was not going to lock the door. She was going to open every last one. Dr. Halloran's report arrived at Edmund Fairchild's office on the morning of November 23rd. 12 pages, single-spaced, signed at the bottom. Edmund read it once, then again. Then he called Constance Whitcomb in Boston. Constance was a forensic handwriting analyst, 74 cases on her record. She had reviewed the quitclaim signature alongside 20 comparison samples, bank records, insurance forms, Christmas cards Raymond had kept for years. Her report was 3 pages. The conclusion was one sentence. "The signature is a forgery. Full stop." Edmund sent everything to Patricia Voss with a 2-paragraph cover letter. The first paragraph summarized the evidence. The second informed Ms. Voss that if the competency petition was not withdrawn within 72 hours, criminal charges would be filed and a formal complaint lodged with the state bar. The petition was withdrawn in 48 hours. Patricia Voss called Edmund the following morning. She asked what they wanted. Edmund told her. The house restored. Full restitution for everything sold. A written acknowledgement of fraud. Signed and filed with the county court. Criminal charges deferred contingent on full compliance. Patricia said she would speak to her client. Edmund said, "You do that," and hung up. On the evening of November 28th, headlights swept across the front windows of the Kominsky house. A car pulled into the driveway too fast. Walter set his newspaper down, stood up. The doorbell rang. Then a knock, hard, 3 times. Ruth looked at Eleanor. Eleanor looked at Ruth. Ruth said, "You do not have to open that door." "I know. You do not owe him a single word." "I know." Eleanor stood up, walked to the front door, opened it. Bradley stood on the porch. In the yellow light, his tie loosened, his jacket over his arm. There was no Patricia Voss with him. There was no Kate. He had come alone, which was interesting, because a man who comes alone is a man who has run out of people willing to stand next to him. "Eleanor, we need to talk." Eleanor did not step outside, did not let him in. She stood in the doorway, in her navy cardigan, with Raymond's watch on her wrist, and she looked at him. "Do we? There has been a misunderstanding." He said it loudly. The the way a man says something, when he wants the neighbors to hear it, and form the right opinion of him. 3 houses over, someone's porch light came on. A curtain shifted. "Eleanor, please, I would like to resolve this without any more unpleasantness." Bradley: "Yes. When did you sell Raymond's workbench?" Bradley blinked. "What?" "Raymond's workbench. The one he built with his father in 1968. The one Kate learned to hammer nails on when she was 6 years old. When did you sell it?" Bradley opened his mouth, closed it. $75, I asked. The buyer told me. $75 for a workbench that took 2 men 3 months to build, in the summer of '68, in a garage in East Rochester. Bradley said nothing. Then the tools, the hand planes, the chisels, the coping saws, the birdhouse Raymond had not finished for our neighbor. All of it, in one weekend, $380 total. Cash. 2 more porch lights came on across the street. "You used that money," Eleanor said, voice level, "to make one minimum payment on a credit card. It did not even cover the interest." Bradley took a step back. "Eleanor, I am trying to have a civil conversation. You are trying to have a conversation on my friend's porch, so the neighbors can see how reasonable you are being. This is not a conversation, Bradley. This is a performance. Now that is not fair." "Fair." Eleanor said the word slowly, turned it in the light, the way she had turned the coin. "You want to talk about fair?" Bradley shifted his weight. "You forged my name on a legal document. You moved into my house. You threw away 45 years of my husband's work for less than $400. Then, when I would not go quietly into a facility, you filed a petition to have me declared insane, so you could take my medical decisions, my finances, my freedom, and you drove over here tonight so you could stand on this porch and convince 3 people watching from their kitchen windows that you are the reasonable one." Bradley said nothing. There was nothing to say. "Tell your lawyer to call my lawyer. Do not come back to this house." Eleanor stepped back. Walter closed the door. They stood there in the entryway, Ruth's hand on Eleanor's arm. The porch light outside stayed on. Bradley did not knock again. They heard his car door slam, heard him back out of the driveway too fast. Then silence. Ruth exhaled. Walter said, "Well." Eleanor said, "I need to sit down." She sat on the couch. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else, from the strange electric feeling that runs through a body when it has spent a long time being small and has just remembered it does not have to be. Ruth brought her a glass of water. Eleanor drank half of it. Then she looked up at Walter. "He is going to sign," Walter nodded. "Yes, ma'am, he is." The mediation was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in mid-December. Edmund's office, neutral ground. Eleanor arrived early with Walter, who waited in the truck with a thermos and the morning paper. Eleanor had made one request. She would sit across from Kate. Not Bradley. Kate. Bradley was not permitted in the room. The conversation would be between mother and daughter. Edmund arranged it simply. Desk pushed aside, 2 chairs facing each other across a small table, a pitcher of water, 2 glasses. Eleanor sat down, placed Raymond's journal on the table beside her water glass. Kate arrived 20 minutes late. Footsteps on the porch stairs, hesitant, uneven. Edmund led her into the room. Kate looked different. Thinner through the face, shadows under her eyes, a plain sweater and jeans. No jewelry, no polish on her nails. The composed woman who had stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms folded was gone. What sat down across from Eleanor was someone smaller, someone who had been sleeping badly and carrying something heavy for a very long time. Edmund said, "Kate, Your attorney has reviewed the evidence and advised you to settle. Is that your understanding? Kate whispered, Yes. Then I will let Eleanor begin. Eleanor looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she said, I need to understand why. Kate's mouth opened, closed. She looked at the water glass, then at her hands, then finally, at Eleanor. We were drowning. Go on. Bradley leveraged everything on two developments. They went under when the market turned. 2022. Credit cards, a second mortgage on our condo. Everything. He said the house was the only asset we could access. He said we would sell it and pay off the debts and get you something smaller. He said it would barely change anything for you. Eleanor said nothing. Kate kept going. Words spilling now. He said if I did not go along, he would leave, and I would have nothing. No money, no home, no one. I have not had my own bank account in 15 years, Mom. I have not signed a check without his signature on it. I did not know how to open a credit card. He handled everything, because I let him. Because it was easier. Eleanor watched her daughter, 46 years old, sitting across from her, smaller than she had been at 20. So you forged my signature? Kate's face crumpled. Yes. On a legal document? Yes. On the deed to your father's house? Yes. Eleanor was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Kate. Yes. When did Bradley sell your father's workbench? Kate went still. I do not know exactly. You do not know. He handled the workbench, Kate. Your father built it with your grandfather in 1968. Your grandfather died the year after. That bench was the last thing they made together. Your father used to lift you up onto it when you were 4. He held your hands over the plane. He showed you how to follow the grain. You were 6 years old. You cried the first time you got a splinter. And he pulled it out with his teeth. Kate covered her face. $75, Kate. A man in a pickup truck bought it at a Saturday yard sale, loaded it into his truck, drove off. You watched him drive off, did you not? Did you not? Yes. And what did you say? Nothing. Nothing. Kate was sobbing now, the ugly kind of sobbing that comes from somewhere deep, that has been waiting a long time. Eleanor did not reach across the table. She let her daughter cry, because some tears need to be cried alone, even in a room with other people. After a long time, Kate lifted her head. Her face was swollen, streaked. Mom. Yes. I do not know how to be forgiven for this. Eleanor took a slow breath. You do not get to be forgiven today. Kate, I love you. I have loved you since the moment I knew you existed. I will love you the day I die. But love does not mean forgiveness. Not today. Not this week. Maybe not this year. Kate nodded, kept nodding, small nods, like she could not stop. Here is what happens next, Eleanor said. Edmund slid a folder across the desk. You will divorce Bradley. That is not a request. That is a condition. Kate said, I already told him last week. He is moving to Colorado. Good. I did not want him to leave. I am scared, Mom. I am so scared. I know. You are going to be scared for a long time. That is what starting over feels like. Kate wiped her face. You will not take a single dollar from me, Eleanor said. Not from the safe, not from the house, not from any of it. You will get a job. You will find your own apartment. You will open your own bank account, alone. Yes, and every Tuesday, starting whenever you are ready. Not before. You will come to the workshop, in the garage of the house you locked me out of, and you will sand a piece of wood, and you will learn how to build. Not for me, not to be forgiven, because your father built things for 47 years, and you never once asked him what he was working on, and now he is gone, and the only way you will ever meet him again is if you pick up his tools and use them the way he used them. Kate was crying quietly now. Yes. Sign the papers, Kate. Kate signed. She did not read them. She did not argue. She signed where Edmund pointed, and she stood up, and she looked at her mother. Mom, yes. I love you. Eleanor looked at her. I know. She did not say it back, not because she did not feel it, but because saying it too soon would be a lie about how far apart they still were. Kate walked out of the office. Edmund gathered the papers. Eleanor sat for a long time. Then she picked up Raymond's journal, and she walked out into the December cold. Walter was waiting. He said, "How did it go?" Eleanor said, "It went the way it needed to go." That was all. He drove her home. Home now meant a small rental on Cedar Street. Walter and Ruth had helped her find it, a one-bedroom above a bakery. Eleanor could smell bread every morning. She had never lived above a bakery. It turned out she liked it. In early January, the title transfer was recorded. Eleanor A. Ashcombe, sole owner of 47 Birchwood Lane. Bradley signed everything through Patricia Voss. He did not come back to Fairhaven. He filed for divorce from Colorado. Eleanor did not ask where in Colorado. It did not matter. Kate had moved into a studio apartment on the other side of town. She was working as an assistant at a dental office, $8 an hour above minimum wage. Eleanor did not visit her. Not yet. On a cold Monday morning in mid-January, Walter drove Eleanor to the house. He asked, "Do you want me to come in?" Eleanor said no, but wait here. She stood on the front walk. Walk, same porch, same magnolia. Bare now, its branches reaching upward against the gray sky, like open hands. She unlocked the front door with the key Edmund had given her. Stepped inside. The house smelled like candles and lavender air freshener. Kate's taste on every surface. The living room was painted a shade of gray Eleanor did not recognize. The couch was new. The bookshelves Raymond had built were still mounted to the wall, solid, level. But the books were gone, replaced by ceramic bowls and framed photographs of strangers. The kitchen had new curtains, new handles on the cabinets Raymond had built. The drawer where she had kept his wooden spoons was empty. Room by room, she walked through a house that was legally hers and felt nothing she recognized. The walls were the same. The floors were the same. The bones Raymond had built were still solid beneath the cosmetic changes, but everything that had made it theirs was gone. She walked through the kitchen, opened the garage door, stepped inside. The concrete floor was clean, but in the corner where Raymond's workbench had stood for 40 years, the floor was darker than the surrounding concrete, stained deep by years of sawdust and linseed oil and wood shavings ground in, by boots and dropped tools. No amount of sweeping could remove it. Raymond's mark was in the slab itself. Eleanor knelt, pressed her palm flat against the stain. The concrete was cold under her hand. She stayed there a long time, her palm on the floor, where Raymond had stood and worked, and quietly built things no one knew about. Then she opened Raymond's journal, to a page near the back. A sketch, not a piece of furniture. A workshop, a proper one, drawn with dimensions and careful annotations. A full workbench along the far wall, tool storage on pegboard, a table saw station with a dust collection system he had designed from a shop vacuum and flexible tubing. And on the right side, separated from the work area by a dotted line, a second space, 4 chairs, a small table, a chalkboard on the wall, below the drawing. In his careful hand, a single word. Someday. Eleanor studied the sketch. Then she looked up at the empty garage around her. Bare walls, stained floor, dusty windows letting in the gray January light. She saw what Raymond had seen, a place where beautiful things could be built, a place where someone could teach other people to build them, a place where the work of patient hands could continue, long after the hands themselves were still. She closed the journal, stood up. Her knees protested, but held. She walked back out to the truck. Walter rolled the window down. Eleanor said, "It is mine, but it needs work." Walter said, "What kind of work?" She held up the journal, opened to the sketch. "This kind." The workshop came together through the winter, one careful piece at a time. Walter rewired the garage in a single weekend, running proper overhead lighting, and a dedicated 20-amp circuit for the table saw. He installed outlets every 4 feet along the bench wall. You can never have too many outlets in a shop, Eleanor. That is just physics. Gil Harrison volunteered to reframe the interior walls and hang fresh drywall. Gil was 68, a widower 2 years now. He had spent his career as a commercial plumber. He showed up every morning at 7, with his own tools and his own coffee, and worked until noon without being asked. He did not need thanks. He needed a place where his hands could still be useful, and nobody expected him to talk about the hole his wife had left. Ruth scrubbed the windows, painted the walls a warm off-white that doubled the light in the room. B. Lindquist contributed a display cabinet from the back of her shop, scratched along one side, but structurally sound. Eleanor hung Raymond's tools on the pegboard, exactly as he had arranged them in the storage unit. Chisels above the bench, hand planes on the left wall, coping saws near the window where the morning light came in strongest. She placed the rocking chair beside the entrance, facing inward, where it could catch the sun and watch over the room. Nobody sat in it. It was not a rule. People just understood. In February, Harold Whitman died in his sleep. Dolores called Eleanor on a Tuesday morning. Her voice was tired but not broken. She said, "It was peaceful." Eleanor said, "I am coming over." Dolores said, "You do not have to." Eleanor said, "I know." She went anyway. She sat with Dolores through the funeral, through the casserole visitors, through the terrible first week when the phone kept ringing and Dolores kept forgetting to answer. And when Dolores said one morning in early March, "I do not know what to do with myself now," Eleanor said, "Come to the workshop on Tuesdays. I need someone to feed my students." Dolores said, "You have students." Eleanor said, "I am about to." And she did. On a Tuesday morning in mid-March, the first student arrived, brought by a caseworker named Diane Kowalski, who knew Ruth from the Presbyterian Church potluck. Tyler Brennan was 16, fourth foster placement, close-cropped hair, a habit of crossing his arms whenever anyone spoke to him. He stood in the doorway of the workshop with his shoulders drawn up, and his expression closed, and he said nothing. For the first 25 minutes. Eleanor did not push. She set a block of pine on the workbench, placed a sheet of 80 grit sandpaper beside it, and said, "Sand it until it is smooth, both sides, both ends. Take your time." Tyler looked at her. He looked at the wood. He picked up the sandpaper. He sanded. Eleanor worked beside him, planing a piece of maple, letting the rhythm of the tool and the smell of fresh shavings fill the silence. She did not ask him about school, or his foster parents, or his feelings. She asked him to sand a block of wood, and he did. By the end of the hour, the pine was smooth on all 6 sides. Tyler held it up, turned it under the light. He said, "Now what?" Eleanor said, "Now you learn to measure." Angela Ruiz joined in April, 35, single mother of 2 boys, working the night shift at the distribution center outside town. She had seen Lindquist's display of RA pieces at B's shop and asked who built them. B had given her Eleanor's number. Angela learned fast, steady hands, a natural eye for proportion. the patience that comes from working nights and raising children alone. Within 2 weeks, she built a small shelf unit. The joints were visible, and one shelf sat slightly higher than the other, but it was solid, and it was hers. She carried it to her car with both arms, and a look on her face Eleanor recognized, the look of someone holding something real. For the first time, "My boys need bookshelves," Angela said. "They have been stacking their library books on the floor." Eleanor said, "Then you know what to build next." The workshop filled slowly, the way good things do. Walter came every Tuesday with sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, ham and Swiss, yellow mustard, no lettuce, because Walter did not believe in lettuce on a sandwich. He would stand behind whoever was working, arms folded, watching for a while, before offering one precise suggestion that was always right. He never asked to be thanked. He never sat in Raymond's rocking chair. Ruth came Wednesday evenings with fabric scraps and her portable sewing machine. She and Eleanor quilted at the folding table while the shop cooled, and the overhead lights cast warm pools on the workbench. The quilt had no pattern and no deadline. They stitched whatever felt right, and let the silences hold when they needed to. Ruth mentioned once, casually, that she had started sleeping through the night again. She said it without emphasis, the way someone mentions the weather changing. Eleanor heard it for what it was. Dolores came every Tuesday, brought casseroles, brownies, once an entire pot of chicken and dumplings that Tyler ate 3 servings of, without speaking. Dolores watched him eat with the quiet joy of a woman who had spent 40 years cooking for someone who had recently stopped needing to eat, and had rediscovered why she had loved cooking in the first place. Bee's shop had a permanent section along the east wall now, under a hand-lettered sign. The R.A. Ashcombe collection, 3 of Raymond's finest pieces, under warm display lighting. The blanket chest with the carved magnolia lid, a shaker chair with a woven rush seat, the child-sized rocking chair that matched the full-sized one Eleanor now kept on her porch. Beside them, Bee had hung a photograph of Raymond, black and white, taken at the lumber yard. Raymond in his work shirt, with sawdust on his collar, and a quiet half-smile that Eleanor remembered better than her own face. Customers came to see the collection. Some bought the newer pieces Eleanor's students were beginning to produce. Simple work, honest work, signed with their own initials on the underside. Tyler had signed his first piece, the week before, a step stool, poplar, with edges rounded smooth, the way Raymond had done. He burned his initials into the underside with a branding iron Walter had made for him, from a bent nail, in a piece of rebar. TB, 2 letters in the wood, the beginning of a reputation that had not happened yet, but might, with time and patience, become something worth knowing. On a Tuesday afternoon in late April, Eleanor was helping Angela adjust the fence on the table saw. When she heard footsteps on the driveway, she looked up. Kate stood at the open garage door. She was thinner than at the mediation, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt, the kind Raymond used to wear on weekends. Her hands hung at her sides. "Empty," she said. "Can I come in?" Eleanor did not answer right away. She looked at her daughter, standing in the entrance to a workshop built from the sketches. Her father had drawn in a journal Kate had never known existed. Every link in that chain was visible between them. Eleanor said, "What do you want, Kate?" "Nothing." Her voice quiet and stripped of everything it used to carry. No performance, no strategy. "I do not want anything. I just wanted to see what Dad built." She looked past Eleanor, at the tools on the pegboard, at Raymond's handwriting on the labels, at the rocking chair by the door catching the last of the afternoon light. Eleanor studied her face. The arrogance was gone. So was the evasion, the sideways glances, the rehearsed smoothness. What was left was a woman in a doorway, with nothing to trade and no leverage to use, asking permission to be in a room. Eleanor reached behind her, picked up a piece of rough-cut poplar and a sheet of 80 grit sandpaper. She held them out. Your father would have started you here. Kate took the wood and the sandpaper. She sat on the stool at the far end of the workbench, and without a word, she began to sand, long, even strokes, following the grain, steady, unhurried. The sound of sandpaper on raw wood joined the hum of the overhead lights, and the soft scrape of Tyler's chisel from the other end of the bench. An hour passed. Kate sanded the board smooth on both sides. She did not speak. She did not look for approval. She just worked. When the clock read 5, Tyler set down his tools, walked over to Eleanor, who was sweeping sawdust near the bench. He asked quiet, "Who is that?" "My daughter." Tyler was quiet for a moment, watching Kate turn the sanded board in her hands. "The one who kicked you out, the one who is learning." Tyler looked at her, then he nodded, picked up his backpack, and headed for the door. At the threshold, he paused. "See you Thursday, Mrs. Ashcombe." "See you Thursday, Tyler." Kate left shortly after, carrying the sanded board under her arm. Eleanor did not know if she would come back. She did not know if she wanted her to, but she had handed her daughter sandpaper and wood, and that was Raymond's way of starting. You begin with the rough, you work towards smooth, and you do not skip steps. The evening of June 20th, the day before what would have been their 50th anniversary, Eleanor carried the rocking chair out to the front porch. She set it in the corner by the railing, facing west, where it caught the last of the day's light. This was where it belonged. Her mother's rocking chair had been on a porch just like this one, cherry wood catching fireflies, and now Raymond's chair was here, answering a memory she had shared once, on a summer evening, and never expected anyone to hold on to. She sat down. The springs creaked, settled, held. The cherry jewelry box sat in her lap. She opened it and touched the necklace inside. Wooden beads hand-turned on Raymond's lathe, each one different in grain and color. A jeweler named Doris Kellerman had finished the last 2 beads for her, matching Raymond's technique, with careful hands, using cherry stock from the storage unit. The chain was new, the beads were Raymond's. Eleanor lifted the necklace and clasped it behind her neck. The beads rested against her collarbone, smooth, warm, light enough to forget, solid enough never to. Raymond's watch glinted on her wrist, still keeping time in its own way. 50 years. That was the plan. 50 years and a rocking chair and a safe full of money and a house they had built together and a magnolia she had planted the summer their daughter was born. They got 47. She was going to sit on this porch tomorrow, on what would have been their 50th, and she was going to think about him, and she was going to let herself miss him, and she was not going to be ashamed of missing him. Because missing someone. Was the shape love left when it had nowhere else to go? The magnolia was in full bloom. White blossoms covered its branches, small and quiet, the kind that open slowly and hold on long past when the wind should have taken them. 46 springs. That tree had bloomed in this yard. It would bloom next year, and the year after, long after the people watching it were gone. Eleanor rocked gently and looked out at the street settling into evening. She thought about Raymond's letter, folded in the nightstand drawer upstairs. "I was never good at plans, Eleanor. I was good at building things, so that is what I did. I just kept building." She thought about $15, and a coin, in a grocery bag, and a door groaning open in a storage facility on the outskirts of a town that had almost forgotten her, about a rocking chair sitting in the dark, waiting for someone to find it, about a crowd going silent because they had been laughing at a woman who had nothing. And then the door went up, and what was sitting in the dark was beautiful. Home is not a building. Home is wherever someone kept working on something they loved, hoping you would find it someday. She reached into the pocket of her cardigan. The coin was there, the same one Raymond had pressed into her palm in 1974, outside the Bijou Theater on Chestnut Street, warm from her body heat, smooth from 52 years of being carried. She held it between her thumb and forefinger, turned it in the evening light. Then she closed her hand around it, held it against her chest, beside the wooden beads, beside the watch that had stopped 3 years ago and never needed to start again. She ran her other hand along the arm of the rocking chair, smooth wood, patient work, a man who measured twice, and loved quietly, and built things that outlasted him. The chair held her, the porch held the chair, and everything Raymond had made, every joint and surface and careful grain matched seam, held the life she was still building. Down the sidewalk, a car turned onto Birchwood Lane. It moved slowly. It stopped in front of the house. It did not pull into the driveway. Kate sat in the driver's seat. She did not get out. She looked at her mother on the porch, at the workshop light glowing warm behind the garage windows, at the magnolia in full bloom. She did not knock. She did not wave. She just sat there for a long moment, looking. Then she drove away. Eleanor watched the taillights disappear at the corner. She did not call after her. She did not need to. Kate would come back on Tuesday, or she would not. Either way, the workshop would be open. Either way, there would be sandpaper and wood and a stool at the end of the bench. Either way, Raymond's tools would be waiting, the way they had waited for Eleanor, 12 years, in the dark, for her to find them. She was 78 years old. She was home. She was not alone. Eleanor closed her eyes. She rocked. She reached up, touched the wooden beads at her throat, whispered his name. Once. Raymond. The magnolia moved in the breeze, and somewhere in the quiet, she swore she could hear him, humming, the way he used to hum, while he sanded, tuneless, low, happy, because the people who throw you away do not get to decide your worth. Only you, and the things you build, with your own hands, do that.